Thank you. Thanks, Costas, first of all, to invite us. And thank everybody being here. I'll talk first, and Bob will follow. All right. To start, I'll just give some intuition. We as human using visual input most of the time. And this is one thing I think we can do. That is, by looking at people, we pretty much have a good idea they are going to stand or they may fall. We don't measure their body weight, center of mass, center of pressure, but especially the more trained people, like judges for gymnastics, for example, they can even give more detailed estimation about the force on their feet, on their legs, on their other parts of the body. So naturally, for computer scientists, especially for those of us working in the general domain of AI, we would ask computer vision do the same. This is pretty much originated our desire to do more in this area. But a little extra thing is I will explain in more detail, you may find a little bit out of place, perhaps the kind of movements we capture. Instead of jumping jacks and jumping ropes, we are capturing Taiji movements. This came from many aspects for reasons. But one of those is that this is a type of exercise becoming actually more and more popular, not just about older people, but also younger people nowadays. And it's a low impact mind-body exercise. It is practiced worldwide regardless of gender, age, and it actually has been proven by many different sources, clinically and otherwise, improve people's balance and stability, since one of the major forces that we're talking about on Earth will be gravity. Therefore, balance and stability would be one of the major things we're looking at. And it also has been recommended to reduce falling. So that's one of the major causes of death for people above 65, death from injury. And this is obviously has a very high impact broadly. And for computer scientists or computer vision people per se, this is not just simple one-dimensional or two-dimensional black plane movement left and right. It actually has orientation changes and height changes of the pose. And this specific form I will be talking about is supposed to be the shortest about the normal Taiji sequences, but it lasts 5 minutes long. Therefore, among all the databases out there, this will be the longest. And here are some of the recorded evidence from other community, such that practicing Taiji can help people health-wise, and in particular for Parkinson's disease, they have helped them to reduce falls. However, and this is just as well motivating to us as computer scientists, is that can we produce computational tools to help scientists or medical researchers to investigate why people change after practicing Taiji. So here's the motivation. Ever since 10 years ago, we held the first symposium about using smart technology and help understand Taiji. This was like 2013, and we got our first real federal fund last year. So it's 10 years effort in persisting moving forward. So we actually have a data set about time we got funding. But I'll tell you the story since. So we're motivated by estimating dynamics from kinematics, visual inputs, we hope to fill this gap between this observation and understanding the force and stability torque force. And in particular, we would like to making this computer vision to be useful as a tool that's low cost. So most kinesiology studying real human force, human body movements very specifically and scientifically and quantitatively are lab-based. So we want to bring them out into the wild, so to speak, real world. So this is the one that I just mentioned. We got this, it's really encouraging. And we also interested in applications besides developing theoretical foundation, developing computational framework. We're also into, for example, actually Bob was one of the famous things he was doing at CMU times is surveillance. And we really want to do stability surveillance to monitor, for example, in senior homes, how people may gradually have the tendency of falling and can forewarning people. And then visual coaching is another thing. I'm personally a practitioner of Taiji and a teacher and a competitor. So I would wish one of these days we, each of you who want to learn Taiji, have some private coach. And stability is also very relevant because as a humanoid robot share actually many problems with human in the sense in particular about falling, to be stable and balanced. And last but not least, also about style analysis. Historical data, we only have pictures. Can we tell something about their force? So there are many, actually, as you know, and talking to some of the students already this morning, you know, perhaps even more than us, existing work on human body pose estimation, shape, single view, get 3D models, all of this. Perhaps this is only a partial list, but many things out there are very good resources. However, like Costas has pointed out, what we are aiming at do have our special perspective. We want to really understand what's on your feet and whether you're going to fall during the next few moments. That's our special perspective. So I'll start by talking about the first thing, that is data collection. Like I said, this is a multi-year project. The funding is also from here and there pieced together. So this is a motion capture lab I have actually on campus at Penn State. We have at least so far collected 3 modalities. The first is motion capture, so this commercial system out there. We also have this multiple tries and decided on using insole sensor to put in place of the subjects, human subjects' shoes, such that we can capture images basically and synchronized with the motion. And at the same time, we have 2 high-speed, high-resolution camera, video camera to capture motion. All these 3 modalities are synchronized. And as I said, subjects are invited to our lab, and we actually ask them to do this sequence, which 5 minutes long, 10 times. Not in one shot. Some people actually feel pretty tired, so we can do in multiple days. Human subjects. So we actually have to do, as some of you know, working with human subjects, we have to do IRB and all that stuff. And we actually had data before this on test various sensors and all things. But the formulae under our current IRB, we have 10 subjects. Each of them did all this, as I said, 10 times, and they have variation, as you can see, in terms of gender is balanced, ages are different, and in particular, experience are different. We have world champions, not just once, but 20 years world champions. We have teachers, professors, we invited from China, actually. They are university Taiji professors. They teach courses, and they can do, surprisingly, 10 times exactly stop on the dot every time, the same time for this each round of this Taiji. But we also have, since I have Taiji club also on campus, there are students who have learned from beginner about 4 years also. And I just want to quickly mention, compare with our data set. There are other data sets out there, I mean, as you all know. But the things that's involving foot pressure is very little. There is one of those listed here, but they are, as you can see on the segment length part, is very short, and usually their resolution is much lower. And I did notice there is one, actually this year's VPR paper on this kind of a multimodal database, but looking carefully at what they do, once again, they only collect sequences no longer than 10 seconds and unbalanced gender and repetitive motions. Okay, next I will invite our collaborator, Bob Collins.
All right, so did we decide that the clicker doesn't work? It does work. I think you have to point it at the computer. So I'm interested in things that are simple and things that work. And so this is both of those, which is good. In fact, they're often correlated. You make something simple enough, it can't fail because it has no other degrees of freedom to fail. So as a practical problem, let's say we have 100 sequences of people doing Tai Chi. They have different skill levels. They may be tired or not tired. So we want to align them temporally. So how to do that? So here's a simple twinned network approach. It's a representation learning approach to do that. So the idea is you take a short snippet of motion capture data, say 2 seconds or 3 seconds long. We'd like to learn an encoder that will take those markers over time and turn them into just a vector, an embedding vector. So again, we take an approach where we take a temporal window of data, we augment it by speeding it up and slowing it down and offsetting it a little bit in time just to make it look a little bit different. And then pass that through the 2 channels of a twinned network to learn an encoder. And what we'd like to do is make similar motions similar, so make the cosine distance to be 1. And we like to make dissimilar motions, which are just different motions from different times in the sequence, map to 0, cosine similarity of 0. And if we succeed at this, then we can just use cosine distance as a single scalar number and just do vanilla time warping, vanilla dynamic time warping to match up this sort of multidimensional data sequence. Oops. And you'd be surprised at how simple the encoder can be, partially because we're using motion capture data, right? We're not looking at the original images. When you have to look at original images and interpret them, we end up getting these deeper networks that need to be used. But if you're starting with motion capture data, this network has basically 2 conv layers, with a nonlinearity included in the conv layer. So 2 conv layers and a fully connected layer, and boom, you're done. All right, so a super simple little shallow network. The loss function for this network is literally a least squares loss function. So again, for things that should be similar, so in a mini batch that you have a set of pairwise samples. So you have maybe n pairwise positive pair samples, and then any sample with all of the other off. Sorry, yes, go ahead.
So if the income layer, go back a little bit, one slide, is the one dimension is time, the other dimension is...
Yes, so one dimension is time, and because it's say 75 frames of time, so 3 seconds, 25 frames per second. The other is marker values. So we have X, Y, Z for each marker. So marker 1, marker 2, marker 3.
And the convolution window is time is 3. What's it?
So and this was sort of hand coded. I think these days what you would want to do is just throw something more general at this and just do linear, just linear layers, or do all fully connected layers. But the idea here was to try to say, well, let's say we over a short period of time and for XYZ values alone for a single marker, let's try to learn something from them. So we have a bunch of conv filters that are basically learning things about a single marker, but over a short period of time. So, you would imagine that this would then compute things like velocity, for example. And then the next layer is going to look then across all of the markers, or all of the intermediate representations of the markers. And so this is where markers across the human body get all correlated with each other. And by that time, because we're using strides and we're not padding, we get down to it's basically a set of vectors that we can just perform fully connected on and produce a fine 256.1 vector. So again, this was kind of, so I learned vision in the 1970s and 80s. so this is sort of using human intuition that we'd like to do sort of do one marker, short periods of time, and then work your way up to more abstract layers and so on.
I have a question.
Yes.
Are you training this encoder on for each subject, or is it across?
Yes, I'll get to that in a second. So at the first, there's two phases, and we'll see that. So again, the loss function is just basically saying I would like things that are similar to be 1, and I would like things that are dissimilar to be 0. So I'm trying to compare what I get as against an identity function. So here's the training. So starting, you just train on each individual person. All together, right? The samples that you're taking just come from one person, and then you augment that to speed it up, slow it down, offset it a little bit to form a positive pair. So you end up getting a pretty good encoder for each individual subject, but then across subject, it still works pretty reasonable, even though it hasn't seen positive pairs across 2 different people. However, because we know these are all the same sequence, we can use this as our signal to do dynamic time warping. And then from that, we can start to mine these cross-subject positive pairs and say, oh, well, this motion by this person is the same as this motion by this other person. And that actually really helps you to mine actual real variability between subjects in the world, and the differences in their poses, the differences in the way they perform things, and the differences in their speeds. So that is then used to feed into a second round that refines the encoder, and that then also refines the dynamic time warping function. And so we're doing 2 things then simultaneously. We're trying to learn these embedding vectors, but then we're also trying to learn them in such a way that we get a really good signal for doing dynamic time warping.
Would it help to normalize the scales of the readings from different subjects, since they might be different heights and different sizes overall?
We do some normalization, so we don't normalize them for height, although I guess you imagine you could. We do, one important thing that I have is a hidden slide, but I took it out for time, which is, so in your short window of motion capture, we center the pelvis at 0, and then we rotate the person in XY so that their hips are pointed in the +X direction from left hip to right hip. So we're not, we're even helping it not have to learn the variability in translation and in sort of XY rotation. That it helps a lot. That helps to make this simple. So in terms of the representation learning itself, it actually does a pretty good job. Again, that simple shallow encoder. So this is 42, actually 43, start and end pose are the same. 43 different key poses that are actual key poses that are labeled by human labelers. And you can see they're just little short, in this case, short motions. This is the TSNE representation of the vectors. And you can see that key poses largely are nice little separated clusters. There's some interesting cases where 2 clusters will map kind of on top of each other, like 11 and 13. But if we look at 11 and 13, these key poses are basically doing the same motion. So even that is okay. 19 and 41, again, doing the same thing. So it's not a mistake. These are clustering. They're supposed to cluster. Yeah, they're similar. So the thing is, the key poses are such that when they're labeled by the human labeler, they're doing this motion the first time, and then they're doing this motion the second time. Those are called 2 different key poses, but the system doesn't know that. It just thinks they're the same motion because they are. So the key point here is that these are nice sort of discrete separated clusters. So it's obviously learning something reasonable about the poses. And then we're using it for alignment. So these are one sample from each of the 10 subjects being aligned. I don't know if I can easily.
So here you interpolate the frames in order to align.
No, it's yeah. So after doing the dynamic time warping task, we're just taking the nearest frame to whichever is.
So you don't do frame. You don't do in between.
We don't interpolate between frames. We just one frame or the other that's closest to the path. These are 25 frames per second, and Taichi is a pretty slow activity, so you don't really have information. I did want to show us. I don't know how easy it is for me to warp into the middle of this. This is going to happen soon. I just wanted to show you one kind of interesting anomaly. This girl is frozen right now. That's because this is a repeated activity that happens 3 times. It's called cloud hens. She consistently did it only 2 times. So to warp a person doing something 2 times with someone doing it 3 times, she ends up getting frozen in time until everybody else catches up to her. It's kind of interesting. So you can also identify anomalies in the data, and then we can actually look at different samples aligned across all the subjects, and we're interested right now in trying to come up with statistical models of the variability with which people perform this. So some people have different skill levels. So this is a beginner. She's actually kind of a beginner too up here. But some of the better people, this guy is our world expert. So he ends up, and because I've outlined one performance of him. So if you're trying to align 100 people with 100 performances, you don't want to be doing all pairs of performances in alignment. This is an atlas-based approach. So just like in brain imaging, you have this canonical atlas, and you register warp everything to that atlas, and then you can transfer labels from the atlas into the real data. So we're treating this guy's performance number 2 of the subject as the atlas, and that's the perfect performance, right? And then everybody else is getting warped into his time frame. So he kind of drives everything. The approach is repeatable. Sorry, not repeatable. It is repeatable, but also transferable. So this is trained on Taichi. Again, it's more interesting if we warp into the middle of here somewhere when they're actually moving around a bit more. So this is karate data. It's not captured by us. It's captured by someone else using a totally different motion capture system, Optisys, instead of Vicon, which is what we use. But nonetheless, the encoder that we learned on our data works fine for this other kind of data. Perhaps not surprising because they're both martial arts, but nonetheless. We tried it on the Penn action data set from here, a different Costas Terpanis, right? He was your postdoc, is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So these are sort of more kind of everyday like actions, throwing balls and whatnot. So this is not transferring from Taichi data onto Penn action activities. This was training on Penn action activities. And then what we were trying to do here is just actually see how good is the representation, how good would it be for time warping between sequences. So there's a score called Kendall-Tau score that kind of evaluates, in this context anyways, evaluates how well an embedding encoder results in embedding vectors that lead to sort of a monotonic alignment between 2 sequences of activities. It's not relevant for repeated activities, so people usually only report on 13 different non-repetitive actions from the Penn action data set. So I just wanted to show you, these are actually 4 variants of our approach. First of all, we had to train on for the video. It doesn't have motion capture data with it, so we took video and ran Google's Blaze pose as part of Google's media pipe sort of framework in order to extract 3D skeletons from the video data. And then we trained a version of our system on 3D skeletons instead. So a couple interesting things had to be done to boost up the performance. In Penn action dataset, right-handed throw is also labeled the same as a left-handed throw. They're both throws. Our system, of course, cares about right-handed or left-handed. They're different, right? So we had to do something where we would flip the video and actually process each video twice, once as a righty video and once as a lefty video, and then take the best results of the two automatically. And so that boosts performance a little. We were not using dynamic time warping here because instead what we did was we combined the cost function that we would have performed dynamic time warping on with just a linear time warp. Just say frame 1 maps to frame 1 and frame n maps to frame m. And that actually does much better. And that's actually very similar to what some other people have done in the state of the art. In particular, CASA, which we never did outperform CASA, that's from Mark Baldfi's group. They're doing a transformer-based approach. But here's CASA without doing positional encoding, which is similar in spirit to what the linear time warping heuristic is doing. But when CASA uses positional encoding, it does really well. And when we use linear time warping as a prior, we also do very well. So just an interesting point of comparison against different systems. Actually, at the time this was written, the transformer models were just sort of starting to become in vogue. Things change very rapidly in this space. And then the final thing I want to talk about is, can we use this in the wild? So in particular, we want to have this Atlas performance, right? And we can label this like crazy, right? We have lots of measurements, we have pressure measurements, we have stability measurements, we have balance measurements, but we can also label what key poses are happening when and what the person is doing. Can we transfer that knowledge by aligning it with some just single view video off of YouTube, and therefore help to interpret the video, analyze it, perhaps even coach the person to do better. So again, we're using Google's Blaze pose as part of their media pipe framework, but many other off-the-shelf 3D from image systems have the same kind of errors. So you get things like leg flips and swaps, missing rims. Just to say, the data is very noisy. So you might say your approach only works really well on this nice motion capture data. No, it also works pretty well on noisy real world data. So here we're, again, this guy's the reference performance. Everybody's being aligned to him. So it's like he's driving everything here. So you notice differences in appearance, differences in camera pose. And then some people are better than others. This is a rank beginner, it seems. And the one that I really want to call your attention to is this video here, which is somewhat surprising that this even works. So this not only has a moving camera, it has fancy camera work with cuts between frequent cuts, in fact, and quite often you only see the upper part of her body. You don't see her legs. But this seems to do a good job, and partly because dynamic time warping works really well, even if you have kind of even a partial signal.
What did you use to extract 3D?
This is something called Blaze pose. It's part of Google's Google Media Pipe. So again, we would now like to go and collect lots of video from the internet and align things to our performers, and that increases the data. I think you have to point it at the computer.
All right. I'll continue. Go to the next report on really going from kinematics to dynamics. So first of all, I think naturally people ask, I just look at you, I can tell you how much pressure on your feet. It's a little bit too hard to answer perhaps. And mathematically it is a one-to-many question, kind of a problem, one-to-many mapping. That is, it must be affected by the weight. For example, two people can have the same kind of pose. And then also some people ask about height matters. Maybe the width, size matters as well. So what we gradually learned from our practice and try and error, I guess, is that we are not really learning the absolute value, even though that is also a good indicator, but we're really learning a distribution. And this will then directly apply to our interest of really quantify stability while someone's in motion. Last, we collected, in addition to the Taiji data, the so-called ordinary movements, poses, etc., like this, 11 of those. Then the most recent things, like everybody doing, is transformers. So there is a transformer architecture that I omitted in my hidden slide, but just to show you the results is that we compare with our ECCV work, it actually can be trained on the Taiji data and predict the foot pressure of the ordinary movements, foot pressure, with about a better outcome than originally trained on the foot pressure of Taiji and predict on the Taiji, our basically earlier work on the ECCV paper. And more recently, of course, our most interesting is stability. And this is the third author here, co-author here is our longtime collaborator from kinesiology. He's very experienced and taught us everything about kinesiology, how people study stability, and three most important things: center of mass, center of pressure, and the basal support, and how classic stability measures are. And just for simplicity, just very simple things like the distance between center of mass and center of pressure. The smaller considered more stable, basically one on top of each other. So from physics, you got one direction force against the other, so the two force cancels out. And then another measure of stability is you have a base support, like the green line outline here, and then where the center of the mass is, if it's within the green and further from the boundaries, the nearest boundary is considered stable. And if outside the green boundary and further, the further it is negative and considered the further, well, the less stable. Okay, so then similarly, using this kind of learning-based approach with our collected data, we can build a simple learner to learn center of mass from the input. And here is just an interesting comparison because OpenPose once upon a time is very popular and still perhaps is. And you can see that so this is the one point we actually made before, and I want to emphasize again, is that in our computer vision community, when we talk about human pose and talking about joints, we have like a social, this kind of whoever out there can label our data, right? So when we do that, some of the joints may or may not be in the right place. And that's exactly why we want to do this more scientifically using motion capture. And here, for example, one joint called hip, and here, one joint called hip, anatomically. And on the right, we're showing that the only correct thing is this corresponding to there. And the other things people are using, like in COCO and the H3.6, they're in the wrong place. And this matters for center of mass, because center of mass is measuring using the endpoint of the bone and towards the endpoint of the other bone, and then figure out the rest. And if the endpoint even in the wrong place, and it's not, no wonder their center of mass will be in the wrong place. So yeah, this is basically we make a point to train on the biomechanically correct data to let our learner to estimate the correct joints and then to estimate. And then ultimately we here show two kinds of stability. So this is actually in our journal paper, but the point I want to give is that indeed purely image-based approach still not quite there. But the interesting thing is if we use right now, even today, using image-based plus an insole sensor, then already we can correlate about 80+% correctly with the lab-based approach that means motion capture data in terms of stability.
Are these predictions on a per frame basis?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But truly dynamic motion will shift the pressure points, right? Like if I'm running forward, for example, that is inducing higher pressure forward on my foot and
Yes.
things like that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So here is what we call surveillance. So this person will go through this whole process of the 24-form Taiji. We have here the estimated, the ground truth in red, the image-based in green, and that purplish blue is using insole and image to estimate central mass, central pressure, and then we also find basal support. So with those three numbers, you're basically able to measure this. Remember, one of those classical stability scores, and this is the other one.
So the ground truth center of mass, where is it coming
From holes.
from? Pose and the weight, like all the parameters of the shape, this whole shape of the person.
That's from the motion capture data.
The ground truth is from motion capture data, but the image based and
But
the
you
other.
need like the length of the foot, you need an anatomic data.
You are right. So that's another thing. Earlier on, I used the word hybrid pose. When we do that, that is the ones that appear in motion capture, we use those that we learn from there. But the ones not appear, we actually use existing off-the-shelf pose stuff, like
Okay.
hands, feet. We don't have those.
Mhm.
Yeah, we just add them together, and that turns out give us a more complementary and better results. Okay. Next.
Physically, what is the definition of the sample pressure? From all the sensors, it's just the average result.
So it's the mean of the weighted sum of those measured pressures or predicted pressures. Yeah, okay, just one mention by passing, I had this hint or wanted to student to take a closer look whether the stability has something to do with experience of Taiji, and some of the trend indeed being observed. And a more interesting thing also, because we're doing surveillance of stability, so definitely we're dealing with instability as well. So this is not just in our lab to record slow Taiji. You can see this is a very fast martial arts sequence. And this is actually one of the professors from China, but at the end, it's actually a little bit off balance, as you can see. Yeah, okay, so I just want to point that out and also just draw your attention at measurements of this stability that we're talking about. And here, obviously, the center of mass, this is the distance, center of mass and center of pressure is on the high peak value, while the center of mass to the boundary of the base of support is at the negative and also as a value. So I just want to quickly summarize what we have taught so far. We demonstrated, although it's a very preliminary and initial efforts, we're still continuing on this, but at least we can see a set of tools. We're trying to be using computer vision as a precision tool, hopefully quantitatively help to making human body dynamics more precise and useful. And also using camera as the basic sensor is really leading to a more inexpensive way and a wearable sensor as well. And also another emphasis we have been doing is really emphasize not arbitrarily just what ordinary person think where the joints are, but also using this in a biomechanically well-defined way. And also using those kind of data to evaluate our computer vision algorithms. And also, I hope especially I'm very excited actually to see the work here. And hopefully we can jointly advance in this subfield. And I think this will be really beneficial and we can make computer vision useful for science. Just a few more things to mention about the applications. For example, about humanoid robots. We draw the parallel between human and humanoid robots. And we indeed took this into our education as well as investigating on hardware. So we actually did a sim to real kind of test. This is supposed to have music, but doesn't matter. I just look at final exam of the students. Basically, they already simulated a dance that of their own design, and now at the final exam, they basically show side by side their simulation with the real robots. Of course, we don't want to fall. That's why our TA, they are trying to protect the humanoid robots. But I want to point out on the left that thing is exactly what we're talking about. That's the stability, the basal support, where the central mass is, where the central pressure is. This one is very interesting. Is a girl who recalled in high school what kind of dance she did. So she designed robot to do that dance and did very well. And she's very happy. And the moves is from her recollection of the younger ages. And also at the end, we actually asked the student to intentionally design a fall. And she also did a very nice job. It's a gentle fall. Maybe one more time. Okay. Go on to the next.
How are these human motions? How are the simulated motions actually programmed? Are they programmed? How are they actually synthesized?
So this is the what's this called? Weebots, yes. So Weebots actually pretty cool. They can output the code directly to the this robot is also from China. It's called Yanxi robot. It's totally by accident. Okay, it's not the same study, but this robot take the output from the Weebots and then just go for it.
But how do you synthesize like stable movements and all of that?
Oh, right here. They actually
So they designed all these.
they design all this.
Individual things.
Yes, yes,
Ah,
yes,
yeah.
yes. Every move of the pose, yes. Yes. Yeah, so we actually, Bob and I jointly teach this course because they also have vision, I mean, eyes and all that stuff. So there's the vision part, and I teach all this kinetics, dynamics part, and then ultimately they are doing this as well. Right. You guys want to see the end? Yeah, this one, so very gentle.
Does the size of the foot is this robot is significantly larger? Is that
There must be a reason for that, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Oh, here is also a side story that this robot, we actually first started with a girls camp, and we got 7 of those robots, and girls are middle school to high school girls, and they also design their own, but they didn't do this programming. They actually manipulate the robot.
Kinesthetic.
Yes, and then they also have software to interpolate between 2 poses. So that's how they did. But this robot, first of all, yes, they have big feet, but also there is an issue about they are falling much more than what the undergrad students when they do. So they end up knocking the head, the neck, breaking the neck, like 6 out of 7, and then they have to ship. Like a rush shipping more to us. Yeah, that was, I mean, that's another reason we try to, I mean, I think this is the parallel. We don't want the older people to fall, and we don't want humanoid robot to fall. Okay, so last but not the least, I'm actually really going for virtual coaching, and I think some of the previous work of Taiji was really relevant. And this is actually me, but that's a master on the left. In any case, we have built a little AR Taiji app. So here you can see this is my motion capture lab. This is the real person, and this actually is virtual. But this could be our world champion, the moves, the right moves. So this combined with our, like what Bob has done with this lined up all the key poses and build a statistical model that we can compare precisely the difference, the deviations, and hopefully one this day we'll have an app to provide proper instructions at home for everyone who wants to learn and be advised. I think I can end there, given time.
Will you give any description of the difference between the motions of these two people doing? For example, how do you describe the difference of these two motions, like the training, maybe one motion, and the people who follow this, they have a different motion? Would like to compare this and describe the difference between these two?
Yes, that's the goal.
I see.
Right now, we haven't accomplished that yet, but that's what we set up to do.
Ah, I see, cool.
Have you considered studying infant development? Like walking in infant development is a very slowly acquired behavior, during which there are many stages of being less balanced, more balanced. I have a baby as well, but it might be. I mean, it's a very different, obviously, morphology from an adult, but it could be interesting to think about applying some analysis to how babies learn.
Yes, but there, I think instruction will be in a different way, I think.
Not instruction, just the analysis of, the balance and how are they
Oh,
over time.
Of course, then that's definitely can. By accumulating data of large normal development babies, we definitely can build, just like what Bob has demonstrated. Maybe they have, I mean, if we do crawling, that's in some sense is a sequence of motion of key pose correspondences we can establish. Then we can analyze what is the normal statistic model, what is abnormal deviation. Definitely, that's all feasible. And in particular, with sensors at that time, perhaps not just foot sensor, all kinds of skin sensor of some sort, then we can enhance this very rich dynamic plus geometry from plus kinetics. Yeah, definitely. Great suggestion.
I'm imagining what a nightmare it would be to write an IRB for doing experiments on infants.
But the different development labs. And
Okay,
you
so
just
just our collaborators.
We do this part.
Just like us, so.
Okay.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, we do.
So for the representation, you use this auto-regressive function, auto-encoder. But since you have the foot pressure, why don't you train on foot pressure as a pre-training?
Yeah, we should do that. So
Right.
yeah, there's a lot
That's
of work.
in the
progress.
top, yeah.
Yeah, so now that everything's aligned and we've aligned with foot pressure, we could actually add foot pressure as an extra modality. So the thing is to just tack it on as a few vectors, pose in motion and foot pressure, or you learn two different encoders. Whatever is gonna work, we would like to be able to do, learn them both jointly, but then shown only the mocap, for example, or the skeleton, 3D skeleton, then predict the foot pressure because of them that way.
Actually, on that note, also for instructions or teaching to demonstrate foot pressure of corresponding key point.
But then the question is, how big a time window you need for the foot pressure? Right?
Yeah, ideally what you would want to do, which this did not do, would be automatically choosing the time. So for example, the karate data is a faster thing than Taiji data. So we actually changed the time window. Also shorter sequences, you have to use smaller time windows. Just the Penn action data set, only like a few 10-second long videos instead of 5 minutes. Yeah, you would want to adjust that automatically. Not sure we can do that. Right now it's a hyperparameter, you set it yourself.
Are these predictions, the predictions of the center of mass and the center of pressure, are these being done in real time?
Not really. Could be though. Yeah, once we have the data, that's just numerical thing.
Okay.
Yeah. But we didn't really try real-time thing here. Yeah, we just want to do a kind of prototype thing.
So in the videos from the student projects, those predictions are from like a video of the humanoid robot doing the dance and then you apply that, then you do the predictions? Or is it being done kind of like online, like when the humanoid robot is moving? Because that's kind of like what would
Oh,
be
you
interesting
mean
to
this is
know.
student project?
Yes, yeah, also the other one, also the pressure estimations, yeah. So my question is, like, are you doing the predictions after collecting the data or
Yes,
in real time, like, or like basically like it's
yes,
after
to your
collecting
first
it?
question.
Okay, okay, right,
Yes. This is, data is there.
okay, but it could be, because ideally, if you can predict the stability, then you can use that as an input to a controller.
Yes.
To stabilize
That's,
the
yes,
risk, right? So-
that's what surveillance means, yes, in real time, yeah. That's definitely where we're aiming at.
All right.
Thank you. You have a question?
Yeah, so for some people that are like risk of falling, maybe they're using like a walker or a cane.
Right.
And that, so maybe their pose seems like they're about to fall, but they have additional pressure coming from their hands. How would we maybe extend this system to hands?
But that's naturally expanded basal support.
Oh, but then,
Basal support is whatever you are contacting with the ground plane.
okay, oh, so then would that have some maybe sensor activity coming or the walker
Right.
to tell us?
Vision, hopefully, the
Vision.
camera, yeah,
Okay.
will indicating contacts that making this boundary much bigger. Center of mass will be.
Okay, it's actually.
Good. You have more slides, sorry for.
No, I'm done.
Oh, okay. First, let me. I'd like to ask about the challenges of computing. It seems that computing center of mass versus center of pressure is really the most decisive factor, right? Of all. For example, how much would it take to compute it for every like floor inclination, or doing it on steps, doing it on not like a flat floor?
So in terms of center of mass, I think it's wherever you want to project it. It's
Yeah.
just you got the pose, you got it. In terms of center of pressure, you need to find all the contact. If you are at different level. We haven't had that,
Big flats.
yeah, kind of data, but
Yeah, I think this would be.
but kinesiology lab
Would
that,
be much easier to generalize this than just trying to run a pure like video-based prediction fall. This would generalize much easier, right? It's just a computation of the normal of the ground or something like that.
right, but what you are saying is actually should be, in terms of expanding our data set, should be included. And our kinesiology collaborator, they actually have steps in their lab, indeed, just for this kind of purpose. They ask people to go step up and step down. Actually, this is in the plan that we are preparing for NIH proposal, is to establish baseline for every subjects, including tracking thing, and then doing the Taiji intervention after several months and do the same kind of moves again and see what changed in terms of stability. But that will be part of our next step.
And my second question is, you know, probably the pure geometric approaches for human pose, the feet is the most, the worst reconstruction. I mean, if you see videos from constructed humans, all of them look like they're doing roller skating. Because first, everybody wears shoes, so there's no way to have the actual like deformation of the foot. Even if you see the reconstructed foot, it's really very rigid. Could we use it really to model better the contact, use pressure measurements to model better the contact with the ground and hence also the pose?
that's actually part of our hope, actually. But I must also warn everyone who want to try this kind of thing. We realize that usually it's natural to think if you have pressure measure pressure, meaning there is a contact with the ground. And if you don't, if you hit in the air, there isn't. But turns out that's not true. If you're in the air, you still have a non-zero measurements. And sometimes depends on how tight your shoe, sometimes it's a non-trivial non-zero measurement in the air. So I would not say in the absolute sense that having the pressure will help you to decide whether your feet is in touch with the ground or in the air. That's that's actually a challenging issue. Right now, we are actually dealing with.
So a pressure map wouldn't have that, so that's an insole sensor.
Insole sensor, yeah.
Pressure map wouldn't have that problem.
I see.
We are also considering, pressure.
Other questions? I have no question, but you can talk about it.
Sure. Thank you.